All right, please welcome Matt and Tina.
Yeah, we don't have.
Doesn't sound like hello? No, it's not on. So we were fighting over which microphone to use because I like to speak with my hands, but Max desperately wanted to be Justin Bieber this morning, so...
How am I doing, Mark? Is this good?
So he went out.
How do I turn this down? This is loud.
Let me just get my stuff together here. We decided we were going to sing this morning because I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a little bit of height difference between the two of us. So when we were practicing, I can't talk with my hands, hold a microphone, keep staring up at him, look at my, it's just too much coordination for me. So we decided maybe you wouldn't mind if we sat down. Is that okay? Sure. Well, it's too late. It's just not okay. That's okay. Sorry. Okay, I got all my stuff. So, that song made me cry. I'm a crier. I'm sorry. Judy's a crier too. Judy always makes me feel better. Because I'm not the only one crying. So my name is Tina. This is my husband, Max. We've been attending Living Well for, it'll be 7 years in January, I think. We walked through those doors. Sanctuary looked a little different then. It was like this wall came here. So from there, this way was our worship center.
How many people were here when we first came? Mark? So not many.
So
drove everybody away.
When Lori asked us to speak, we were like, well, okay, what do we do? I've shared different things at the women's conference. Max speaks in the business community, but it's a whole different dynamic doing it together. We figured, well, there are a lot of people here who don't know us, so we thought we would share a little bit of our background and more of Max's testimony, since there's been opportunity to hear mine at different times. We've been married for 19 years in March. I got married young. Max is a little bit older. We've been together for 24 years. I grew up about 2 hours north from here in the little town of Montreal. It's right next to the Hurley Iron, you know it. Near the Hurley Ironwood area, small little town. We just have a little post office there. I never say that I'm from Hurley because if you know Hurley, you know why. But I'm not a Hurley girl. So I went to school in Boston, went to Northeastern University as a pharmacy major, and my roommate was dating Max's roommate. So my sophomore year, I didn't have a lot of money growing up, and we only got a short time off for Thanksgiving, so my roommates used to, take me home with them. I was always the attachment. So if any of you people have children in college and they want to bring friends home, please let them, because to people like me, that just means everything. I had a lot of adoptive families. But anyway, I went home with her one year for Thanksgiving, and we were different people back then. I grew up in a Christian home. My mom, spirit-filled, tongue-talking, Bible-waving.
No snakes, though.
No snakes. It's predominantly, this is going to be hard. Predominantly Lutheran and Catholic area up there. So my mom had a house church, so all that stuff just made her really, really weird. I was a really insecure child. Small town, a lot of labels get put on you. I was, different things happened to me in my childhood, and I don't want to get into that today, but I was kind of a mess and didn't know who I was. So when I went away to college, you know, all the way in this big city of Boston, I figured it was an opportunity to just be whoever I wanted to be. I didn't have to have those labels on me anymore. I didn't have to be the good girl afraid to get into trouble, and I could just, but when you don't know who you are and you go into that environment, then you find out that you create yourself to be the person you think other people want you to be. And that creates a whole other scenario of messes. But, so went home with my roommate Christina for Thanksgiving, and Max is from Portland, Maine, born and raised. And I met him Thanksgiving morning. In Portland, it's a tradition for the two high schools in town to play each other for a turkey game, football game. And it's their tradition.
It's at 11 o'clock in the morning before dinner.
And what did you do before then?
Well, we tailgated.
Tailgated. It was cold. It was Thanksgiving. Their weather's a lot like here. So I met Max at 7:30 in the morning in the kitchen of his apartment, and he, I think, probably had been tailgating from the night before to that time.
Unfortunately, one of us.
So that was like, I mean, I don't know, I just met him that morning, but you know, it wasn't his first Baileys and coffee that he was drinking at that time. So, and I don't know why. I was never a big partier or a drinker, but he was cute, and
Parents said that too.
So I was kind of smitten, and because my roommate was dating his, I mean, we kind of spent the whole weekend together. We shared our first box of Milk Duds together. We went to the movies, and I always like to get Milk Duds at the movies, and so he bought me a box of Milk Duds, and he shared them with me. And then I found out, probably about 5 years after we had been married, that he hated Milk Duds. But he ate them for me, and then I was like, well, do more for me. You don't need to eat the Milk Duds if you don't like the Milk Duds. But anyway, just the sweet things you do when you're dating, you know. So.
Well, I do that now. I don't need to do Milk Duds now.
Anyway. So we dated long distance. I mean, that was the start of it, but did a lot of things I had never done before that weekend. Scalped my first tickets. They drove us back to school on Sunday. It was an impromptu thing, and instead of going to the Boston Brewers hockey game,
Bruins.
I said Bruins.
I said Brewers.
Bruins hockey team. Excuse me. He took me and we scalped his tickets so he could take me out to dinner. So that was the start of the fall. But
I don't remember. We did pretty well though. We sold them like that.
yeah. So when he went home that weekend and he told his friends that he had met the girl he was gonna marry, and it was sweet. And, you know, I wish I could say our whole life was all that sweet, but you know, he had his issues from growing up. I had my issues from growing up.
I kind of grew up in I went to a Baptist church, and when I say went, I maybe went 3 times. I probably went to more church with my friends who were all Catholics than I did at my own church. So I wasn't worrying about losing my good boy card. I grew up a little different than Tina did. So she probably thought I was the bad boy.
He was the bad boy, but he was kind of scrawny. So
I was pretty skinny.
He didn't have the brawny bad boy image, but everything else was pretty much there. Anyway, so we dated for 4 years long distance. I was in school in Boston. He was in Portland. We did a lot of going back and forth. And
it's about 90 minutes away. So for those people that are geography challenged, I guess.
So we got married the year after I graduated college. I went to pharmacy school, so I got a job as a pharmacist right away. He at that time had worked his way up. He was a district manager for an auto parts company. So when I graduated, I had a lot of debt, like a lot of debt from school. But both of us had grown up in pretty financially challenged households, so we just, that money started coming in, and instead of being wise with it, we just spent it. You know, we bought a house, we had to furnish the house, you know, just whatever. Not crazy, but we weren't.
That was crazy.
We didn't live in any kind of wisdom as far as that goes. We didn't learn that. And Max ended up getting his company.
Well, our company, the company I worked for, got bought out, and so I was working for the new company that bought us, and I didn't quite like the way they did things. So my old company had stores down in Florida, so we transferred to Florida like maybe a year after we got married. Yeah, so I did my job down in Florida, and I don't know if anybody's been to Florida in the winter, but it's awesome. But Tina didn't like Florida. She didn't like putting Christmas lights up and sweating. She just did not like Florida. So we lived there, I think, 5 years. Oh.
7 or 8, yeah.
Okay.
We'll argue about that later. But we were, I think, for me, moving from
She's right, by the way.
Maine to Florida, because I never felt at home there. I didn't like the weather. I didn't like I don't know, the people were kind of different. So all of that mess that I was carrying inside just started to well, I mean, you can only hide and cover things for so long, and then things just start to. So I was just unhappy. So we were like, well, our daughter Rachel was born there, and about 2 months.
Well, I was just going to say, and you know, the job that I had down there was a lot different than what I was used to in Maine. Work ethic was way different. So I literally, and Tina will tell you this, on Sunday nights I had to prepare for a sales, you know, a manager meeting every Monday morning with my boss, and literally I expected to lose my job that morning every week for how many years? 2 years. And it was pretty stressful. Traveled a lot, wasn't home, you know, we had a newborn, and I was on the road constantly. So, you know, even though I liked the weather and I liked the area, it was not a good work environment for me.
So, and then Rachel was born, and my grandmother passed away shortly after, and she was like she was the first person in my life that I was really, really close to that I had lost. And I was kind of like, you know what, I want my kids to grow up near family, whether we move back to Maine or we move back to Wisconsin. I mean, I just wanted to be closer to family. And I think that was on top of all this other stuff that was going on, because on the outside, things might have looked fine, but I was rotting on the inside. So, you know, and I was just looking for anything, and you know, we talked, oh, well, maybe we should go to church. But you know, you heard his background, and part of what did
well, you know, my thinking, I didn't want to. Church to me meant a lot of rules, regulation. I couldn't be who I wanted to be, which was a fun, having a good time kind of guy. And for me, church was, you know, if I go to church, I'm going to have to change. And, you know, not realizing I did have to change, but in a different way than what my mind was telling me. So, for me, church was kind of, you know, it was like, I wanted to do it, but I didn't want to do it. I don't know if that makes any sense. But I wanted to be who I was, but I did know that there was things that had to change in my life. So it was kind of a tug of war kind of a thing.
He thought that, I mean, you know, God's always wooing us. Like, he's always, whether you recognize it at that time, he's always calling to you. He wants you. You were created to be with him, and he will stop at no lengths to constantly be drawing you near. So all, you know, that's going on. He just didn't know what it was. I was hiding. He, you know, even if today is the first time you ever saw him, he likes to have fun and he likes to joke, and his picture growing up of church was people that went around and you never smiled and everyone was like, oh, God bless you, and you know, you couldn't have a beer when you watched a football game, and you know, you couldn't, oh, you can't laugh, and you can't joke, and you can't, there's all these can'ts, and to him that just wasn't who he was. So he wasn't prepared to lay that down. So Rachel, born, you know, we ended up back here. I figured I hadn't been near my family in quite some time, so we decided to move back here. Well, here, this was about as far north as we could go that Max could have some opportunities to work. He didn't know if he wanted to go back into auto parts or pursue something else. So we ended up here. He ended up going into real estate.
Well, I ended up being a stay-at-home dad
for
3 months. And Rachel, I think, was 2. And she's awesome, by the way, Rachel. But being a stay-at-home dad wasn't really what I wanted to do. You know, I like to work. I mean, not that that's not work. It just wasn't. It was a different kind of work for me. So it was too hard, right?
just an offside, like from that, he had those. I've told other ladies this, but it was like the best thing for our marriage and parenting, because he really sees himself, like he co-parent, like it's not like, oh, I'm babysitting the kids tonight when he's home with the kids. He's a parent and he takes that seriously. But after that time he spent home with, he never, because I was always working as well, he never, when he came home, he never asked, you know, what's for dinner, why is dinner not made, you know, or what'd you do all day, because, you know, sometimes you walk in and it looks like the house blew up, and, right, you know, there's stuff everywhere. Not once did he ever ask, because he knows when you have a 2-year-old that the house just blows up and there's no time to eat or get anything ready or cleaned or what have you. So just an aside, you guys, if you ever have a chance to okay. Maxie. Anyway, so he went into real estate, right? That's something you always wanted to do. So as he was home with Rachel, he got his real estate license. Kind of long story short, that way, you ended up at a RE/MAX office.
Yep.
And God, he's so funny the way because you know how when you're in the middle of something, you can't always see that he's wooing you, and I talk about that, but you know, from this side, when you look back, you know, how he had his hand in everything. So he worked for RE/MAX, and Stephanie Matson, who those of you who know the former pastors that were here, was the receptionist in his office. And Stephanie is nothing, you know, he found out she was the pastor's wife, and she is bubbly, she is funny, she frolics daily, like anywhere, anytime, she will just literally frolic, like picture frolic, skipping, arms waving, that she likes to do that. So Stephanie was Jesus to Max.
Yeah, she, you know, she would talk, you know, religion, and, you know, I had some weird thoughts. You know, my thinking was, hey, if I'm just a good person, that's all I really need to do. And didn't realize there was so much more. And Stephanie always, you know, kind of coached me on, you know, what more there is. And she did invite me to church, I think, every week for 2 years, or, you know, a year and a half almost. And I said, yeah, I'll be there, can't wait. And so every Sunday morning we'd do a Sunday morning routine, which would be getting up around 10, make a little coffee, sit around in our pajamas, watch TV, and, you know, miss church. I don't know how we kept missing church, but we did. So then I'd go in the next week and I'd be like, oh yeah, next week. So we just did this forever. And then one day Rachel asked me, how come we don't go to church? And that was an eye-opening thing, because I know
God can use kids too.
Because I know when I was Rachel's age, I never would have asked why we don't go to church. And so that to me really hit me. And you know, that's a good question, Rachel. You know, I really can't answer that, other than your parents like to sit around on Sundays afternoons. I don't know. So so then the next time Stephanie asked me, which was that Monday, we didn't see you, we missed you. One Sunday, never in a guilt, never guilt, jokingly, we'd love to have you kind of thing. So one Sunday I got up and it was 8 o'clock or so, and I woke everybody up and said, we're going to church. And this was the church we were going to go to, and my concern was, I don't know church. And I didn't want to come into the church, hate it, and then have to tell Stephanie the next week that we didn't like the church. Because I hate confrontation. So that was what really made me nervous coming in was, what if we don't go anymore? So we came, walked through the door. I don't know if anybody remembers Christopher Mark, who was our worship pastor. Youth pastor, sorry. Currently worship pastor. Sorry, bud. But Christopher gave me a hug, and I'm not a hugger, but he gave me a hug and said, "You're Max, we've been waiting for you guys to come. We kept hearing you're coming and you're here." And he gave me this big old hug, and I'm like, whoa. I don't mind people saying hello, but that's a little much. And then I was thinking, what's going to happen when he hugs Tina? Because I know she's not going to like that.
Okay, I still can't do this without crying. For me, yes, normally a guy coming up to you that you've never met that wants to hug you is a very creepy thing. And even when he hugged Max, I was like, oh dude, don't. But see, Christopher has an anointing on his life, and he carries the Father's heart. I'm sorry, I relive this moment every time I talk about it, and it just overwhelms me. But I was so broken on the inside. His hugging me. I was the prodigal daughter. And when I walked through those doors and he hugged me and said, "I'm so glad you're here," I could just feel some hope.
And so this is what she looked like every Sunday for like 2 years.
It is true.
I mean, I didn't think church was going to be so painful. I didn't know what was going on. So, we came in, we sat down, and like Tina said, this is the way the church was, this is the hallway. So we go in, and I'm expecting a typical Catholic Baptist, church service, and they start singing, and people are standing up, waving their arms, and I'm like, what is going on? I never saw anything like that. And so I was like torn, should I stand up or stay sitting? If I stand up, people will wonder why I was sitting, and if I get up, they're gonna, I was just worried anybody's gonna notice me. And because I just wasn't used to that. And so, I think I got up, I'm not sure, I think, I don't know, I know I didn't raise my hands. But I may have mouthed a few of the lyrics, but that was about it. And Tina was standing next to me just crying. And I'm like, what did I do? So, anyway.
See, and for me, because my mom, that was how she worshipped. And one of my fears, but it was more of an excuse when we would talk about churches, was always like, well, you had to find a good church. In order for my mom to have a good church, she had to have a house church. So, I can't go to church if it's not a good church. It's going to waste your time if it's not, if they don't teach the Bible, and if, they don't listen to the Holy Spirit, even though I don't want to be listening to the Holy Spirit, but, they should be doing that. For me, it was like, oh, this is the place. Like, this is so, and the music and the it was just, yeah, it was good. It was good.
So we got done, and I'm like, all right, so now we're gonna have the conversation. Are we going back to church? Do I have to tell Stephanie on Monday that it's not for us? And so we got in the car, and I'm like, so what did you think? And of course Tina says, well, what do you think? And I'm like, well, it's a little weird. I said, what did you think? And she goes, I think we found that church. And I'm like, really? So, you know, I said, all right, we found that church. And I think we literally did not miss a church service for 5 years. I mean, we just continually, anything that was going on, we were there. We, you know, the big joke around here is they were doing this big remodel, and I would show up in my work clothes, which were, you know, as Kerwin calls my business casual look, and I was pulling nails, you know, and these guys are up in the office laughing, what's this Max guy doing? He's like wearing, you know, a nice pants and a nice shirt, and he's pulling nails. But I just wanted to do whatever we needed to do, because it was known that this was the church. God's presence was here, and we didn't know what we needed, but there was a peace that was here. So it's true. It didn't matter what was going on. We were here. We made a priority to be here.
We just wanted to be, whether we were invited or not, it didn't matter. We were here. We showed up. Like if we weren't sure if it was open to the whole church body or not, if there was any question, we were here. So then, you know, it took stages. We started in the back of the church,
Yes.
then kind of in the middle of the church, and then, oh, Max raised his hands one week. Ooh, a little crazy. That was kind of fun. And now this is our home. But we wanted to, how do I go from there? So, God's faithfulness through it all. When we were trying to decide what part of our testimony to really talk about, one of the biggest things we walked through as a couple is our, you know, our financial issues. We talked about how we just started our lives together, spending recklessly. And when Max started in real estate, he did really well right from the start. Like, you know, they talk about having a circle of influence and all that.
I knew 0 people in town.
He did really well, and instead of being wise in that, we just spent like we always had
Well, it was easy.
spent.
You know, it was easy to make money.
So after we had been coming here for a while, we were kind of like, you know, God just starts dealing with different areas of your life, and it's like, you know, we really need to get our spending and our debt and all of that under control. It's just a little too crazy and a little too, you know, just there was a security issue there that we were just ignoring and not dealing with. So we both spent some time praying about it, and the Holy Spirit told me that we needed to give more. And I was like, okay, that's not the answer that I wanted. Like, that's just, we can't give anymore. Like, what are you talking about? So I was like, well, Max is not going to get that. That's just crazy, and then we'll just go with whatever he gets. And so we were talking about it. He goes, yeah, I think we need to give more. And he had the same amount I did. And I'm like, oh, crap. But we had purpose that whatever we were told to do. I think Lori talked about this a couple weeks ago. You know, when you're walking in obedience, is just cooperating in what God has for you, because He knows the beginning from the end, and His plan is better than anything that you can come up with. And you know, sometimes it's counterintuitive to how we think. So we're like, okay, well, we'll start doing that. We didn't know how, you know, bills were going to get paid if we did that, but we just purposed to do that. And I would like to say that, you know, immediately things started to turn around, and it was just amazing, and it was awesome, and God showed up huge, but that's just not what happened.
I was in real estate, and we all know what just happened in the real estate market, and pretty much our income dropped to about 1/6 of what it was. So we went from, you know, I always felt like I could out earn anything. But as commission sales, that's what you do. And you you make your own way. Well, we didn't make our own way. There was other things in effect. And that's when I learned that I don't control everything. I mean, the Holy Spirit and God works through us. He helps us do whatever needs to be done. And so that was a lesson I learned pretty quick when we weren't making any money and literally weren't able to pay our bills. I mean, we paid the bills that needed to be paid. We needed to live, eat, and get to work, but that was it. And it was pretty rough. And I can tell you that if we weren't in the family we were in at the time, it would have been a lot worse. A lot worse. This church body really was very helpful.
We had stopped spending prior to that. So even when you make those decisions and you're gonna follow what God has for you, so his income stopped. I was working part-time at the time, and I couldn't pick up extra shifts. Normally as a pharmacist, you can pick, I was turning down shifts all the time. I couldn't pick up an extra shift unless I wanted to drive to another state. It was crazy. Our dryer broke. Our Rachel got this weird autoimmune syndrome called Hemlock-Schonlein purpura. It's just weird. She got these bruises on her legs, and her legs swelled up, and there wasn't really anything that they could do. It clears up on its own, but they're worried about it affecting the kidneys, so we had to go in every 2 weeks for blood pressure and urine checks for her. And so that was cost adding up. We were like, what is going on here?
Transmission went in.
The transmission went on our van. We were stolen from, literally. Our computer was stolen, my phone was stolen. It's like, oh, okay. And Max is right. When you get in situations like that, or even if it's other things that you're dealing with, the enemy wants to isolate you, and he wants you to live under shame and condemnation. And I can't even remember how many times I sat just crying to Judy, and I was so tired. It's like, we're doing everything that God is asking us to do. Are we doing something wrong with? And she would tell me the story about Moses and her, the hand holder, and she would just hold me. You need that. You need that encouragement, and you need to be able to be real. And I'm not talking about going around saying, woe is me, and all of that. But you need to be able to be real, and you need to be able to have people stand with you. So I think that's where the...
Hey buddy, you crying? We'll buy you
that was really important. And then there was a turning point. We were here in worship one day.
Yeah, well, I always felt like I was on a wall, and that if I really work hard, I could fall on this side of the wall and everything would be perfect. But I was always worried about teetering on the other side of the wall, where everything was, financial ruin, and we refused to file bankruptcy. We said we're going to pay, we're going to make it. And so we were taking 10, 12 calls, and I literally felt like I was about to fall on that other side. But during that song, I don't remember what song it was, but I was worshiping, and I just had a vision of Jesus lifting me up off the wall and just saying, it doesn't matter where you are. I have you in my arms, and it doesn't matter. You're going to get through this. I'm going to help you get through it, and you're going to be better for it in the long run. Amen. And so that was my moment where because I was not sleeping, I was, always, what am I going to do? What do I have to do? Because that's kind of the kind of guy I am. I feel like I have to do it. And if I don't do it, it's not going to happen. And that's when I realized I don't have to do it anymore. And that's when I just relaxed. And I was able to I wasn't burying it and putting it aside. I knew it was there, but I knew that I had help to get it fixed. And that's when things started to happen for us. I was working as a RE/MAX agent, as a RE/MAX agent, it's a different commission, and I won't bore you with the details. But the bottom line is I had to pay to work every month. And that was a struggle, because, Tina would say, why don't you get a real job, or why don't you, get a job where you can work, and there was a lot of pressure, where you can get some income, and instead we're writing checks. But I just felt like God was telling me that was my career. That's what I needed to do. And you know what? Tina said she didn't mean it that way. She just wanted an income. Yeah. And so, crazy thing. We're in the middle of the worst home sale and collapse in a long time. And, when that happens, opportunity comes. And I guess that's the whole point is that you got to look for the good always. And I had the opportunity to buy a real estate company that was breaking even. And people would be like, well, why would you buy a real estate company at that point? But it equaled about 2 months of what I was paying my employer at the time. And I said to I said to Tina, and we prayed on it, and it was like, we'll have about 10 months of not paying anything out. And, we have a risk of a company that's breaking even that loses money, but you know what? God says go for it, we're going to go for it. And so we did that. And, it was a small little company, 9 agents. Now we have 30 agents. We're a bigger company. And in all of that, God worked and gave us an opportunity that I wouldn't have had if the market was really good. People don't sell real estate companies cheap when the market's good. So all of that stuff helped get us to where we are today.
Yeah, and this wasn't, this is just, we say it in a short time, but it happened over years, and it was long, and it was drawn out, and it was hard, and there was a time where, after he had started at Realty Executives, and he was downstairs doing the bills and the taxes, and I always hated that. I always hated that time because he was so stressed, and you could just feel the tension in the house, and it just was not a good, and trying to keep things up. You never want your kids to know the full extent of what's going on and why they can't, do whatever activity that everybody else is doing, because you don't want them to see you any differently. And Max was downstairs, and he comes up the stairs, and he's looking at this spreadsheet. He's got this look on his face, and I'm like, what now? And he's like, I did the numbers 5 times, and I'm like, can you just tell me? And he's like, we paid off more debt this year than we had money coming in. I was like, excuse me? He's like, we paid off more debt this year than we had money coming in.
It was a pivotal moment. God working in everything. We were able to settle with credit card companies. We were able to do a lot of different things, and without filing bankruptcy, which to me was important in the sense that I felt like we owed it to the people that we borrowed money from to pay them.
And we, a little bit after that, we finally had a little bit of money in the bank, and we were like, oh, we can get ahead of our bills next month. Like, for the first time, we had money to pay our mortgage, like, before it was due, and it was like, sweet! We hadn't had that feeling in years, and it was so exciting. And I was kind of playing around on Facebook one night, and there's this young lady, and she's looking for money to go on a mission trip, and she needed it by tomorrow, and we didn't even really know her that well, and the amount of money that she needed was the amount of money that we had in our savings account. I was like, oh, that would be so cool, but no. And then I could just feel this, oh no, whatever. And then I really felt like the Lord wanted us to give that. And I'm like, well, you know what? I said, I am in, but there is no way that I am asking my husband to give that money away to this girl for that. I don't care. But I'm all in. If you can convince him, then I'm all in. But it's on you. It's not on me.
So that morning, I'm sitting on the couch going through my Facebook, and I see the same post. And it was so weird. It was like, wow, we should give her that money. Huh. And so I went in. Tina was getting ready, and I said, "Hey, did you see this? I think we should give it to her." And Tina freaked out. She freaked out. And so at that point, I'm like, well, we better write the check right now, because this is craziness. So we wrote the check, sent it to her. And then, I don't know, 3 days later, 4 days later, I think I told some of you guys the story. I go to the mailbox, and in the mailbox, you know, we declare a lot of stuff on that screen, and I tell you, to this day, that's one of the things that I love about this church. But I went to the mailbox, and there was a check from one of the credit card companies that there was some sort of a lawsuit, and they had to reimburse us some money. And it was literally a little more money than what we just wrote a check for. And to this day, that is even more amazing than us paying more debt than we, paying more of our debt off than we were coming in, because it was just God saying, thank you, and we declare stuff, and we read that, checks in the mail, it happens. I've talked to many people, and Sue is one of them, that has had that happen, where checks come in the mail, and just by being faithful. So I'm not saying it's easy, but it was.
And it's not just about getting something. I mean, we don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a picture of God's faithfulness to you when you cooperate with Him. That He has your back. When He gives you a promise, He is faithful to walk it out. That when things are really, really hard and you can't see the big picture, and you can't feel God, or you can't see Him moving, and you can't. It's so hard. It's so hard, and it takes your breath away sometimes. But He is faithful, and when you're forced to trust Him, when you're forced to trust Jesus, when you allow Him to take you off that wall, when you don't feel it, you are going to walk in the fruit of that moment. You are going to have a time where you walk in the fruit of that moment, in the fruit of that season, because it's a promise. We were just doing down in the kids the story of Joseph the last month or so. And when you look at Joseph's life, his brothers sold him into slavery. And then, they threw him in a pit. And then this caravan came by and they sold him into slavery, which I guess is better than they were going to kill him. So, but I think God had a hand in that when you look on it back, because then they sold him to Potiphar. And he was placed in Potiphar's house, and he was put in a place of authority there. And things looked great. But then he was accused by Potiphar's wife, and he was put into jail. But God moved through all of that. And you just picture when he's sitting in that pit or all these things, it's like, God, where are you? Well, God was there. He was orchestrating things. And some of the blessings that we've walked out this last year, Max, it's always been his dream to own a RE/MAX franchise. And he was essentially given a RE/MAX franchise this year. Every time we have turned around, it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Down to the building that he got, that is much bigger than what he needed, but it's awesome, it's there for growth, and it's the price that he wanted to spend. He wanted the cubicles. There was another real estate company who was selling all their cubicles, and he wanted to buy them for this new building, and they wouldn't sell to him. And he was offering to give them a fair rate, and they wouldn't sell to him. And then
I get a call on a Saturday from someone that used to go to the church saying, hey, I'm over at this building and telling us to throw these cubicles away. Do you want them? I said, what building? Well, it was Mitch that actually called me. And I, what building? Well, you know, this building. I'm like, they're throwing them away. I was willing to buy them. So we brought our truck over, loaded them up, and now they're in my place. And the people that refused to sell them to me was at our open house that we had in standing right next to them. So, I don't know. But anyway, that was God working, you know, saying, here, these are your people, you know?
God's ways are not our ways. So.
But those are another blessing that would have cost me a heck of a lot more than free.
So, you know, one of our biggest things is when, and kind of what we'll see, what we want you to take away today is that whether, it doesn't matter what you're walking through, whether it's financial or whether you're carrying a deep wound or hurt that's been done to you or you've done to yourself, whether, because, you know, we created our mess ourselves. We, you know, God would have been completely justified in saying, you know what, you know, I help those who help themselves. Clean up your mess. I've learned to hate that saying because, you know, God helps those who help themselves. Well, if I could help myself, I wouldn't need, like, it doesn't make sense to me. That's what grace is. That's what His mercy is. That's why He sent His Son, so He can have a relationship with you. Like, he loves you so much, it doesn't matter. He'll help you. He orchestrates these amazing things that can only be Him. And it's all for His glory. It's nothing that...
Nothing we did.
Like, I'm just standing here, like, oh, are you kidding me? Every time He would tell me, I'm like, are you kidding me? And He is no respecter of persons. What He has done for us, I think it's so important that when God does something for you, you need to, whether you're nervous or it's scary or it's hard, we need to share those things because people need to know. Like, I can't necessarily, you know, relate to the story of Joseph. How does that apply to I mean, you can learn from it, but when Judy told me what her and Glenn went through, because, you know, he's a doctor. They don't have any financial problems. Like, are you kidding me? She couldn't possibly understand. But she understands. She understood. She walked through hard things, and she was able to encourage me and hold my arms up. So, we thought we would end today, and you know, that song that we sang today, It Is Well, that is such a beautiful picture of the whole wall story. Like, coming down off that wall, and it doesn't matter how chaotic. Kerwin, you wanna? Would you be able to come up and do the song?
Yeah.
Could you please? Thank you. Appreciate it. I was thinking that because I love that song, and it's so beautiful, and it's such a beautiful picture about how we're held. And it doesn't matter, you know, sometimes the storm is calmed, sometimes He calms you. Like, it's so, and I was like, oh, I wish, you know, it happened late in the week. I'm like, oh, I wish I could have asked Kerwin to do that song. And then I walked through the doors this morning, and they were practicing it. And I was like, oh, the Holy Spirit is so good. Like, the Holy Spirit is, like, I dropped my stuff on the floor, and Rachel's like, okay, chill out now. So we would like an opportunity this morning that if you're going through something hard, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial, just anything that's hard and you're feeling like you're tired and you want to give up, we would love just to be able to pray and encourage you and just impart whatever God has given us to you, because ultimately it's all Him, and we just want to give it away. So if some of you other would like to come up and pray as well, but we'll just be here. If you need to go, but we would love just to be able to lay hands on you and pray with you. After we're done, though, Max is headed to Washington, D.C. this afternoon. We're actually going to leave here, and I'm going to put him on a plane. And he has some meetings with some senators and mucky-muck politicians, and he's going to the Capitol building and all that kind of stuff. So I would love if some of you would stay and pray with him. He has great intentions of making some declarations and praying and imparting some kingdom goodness when he's there, because yeah, he carries that with him. So,
Amen.
so yeah, that's the plan. Thank you for listening to us this morning.
Easy, but
Right.
it was.
And it's not just about getting something. I mean, we don't want to.
Right. Yeah.
It's just a picture of God's faithfulness to you when you cooperate with Him, that He has your back. When He gives you a promise, He is faithful to walk it out. That when things are really, really hard and you can't see the big picture and you can't feel God, or you can't see Him moving, and you can't. It's so hard. It's so hard, and it takes your breath away sometimes. But He is faithful, and when you're forced to trust Him, when you're forced to trust Jesus, when you allow Him to take you off that wall, when you don't feel it, you are going to walk in the fruit of that moment. You are going to have a time where you walk in the fruit of that moment, in the fruit of that season, because it's a promise. We were just doing down in the kids the story of Joseph the last month or so. And when you look at Joseph's life, his brothers sold him into slavery. And then, they threw him in a pit. And then this caravan came by and they sold him into slavery, which I guess is better than they were going to kill him. So, but I think God had a hand in that when you look on it back, because then they sold him to Potiphar. And he was placed in Potiphar's house, and he was put in a place of authority there. And things looked great. But then he was accused by Potiphar's wife, and he was put into jail. But God moved through all of that. And you just picture when he's sitting in that pit or all these things, it's like, God, where are you? Well, God was there. He was orchestrating things. And some of the blessings that we've walked out this last year, Max, it's always been his dream to own a RE/MAX franchise. And he was essentially given a RE/MAX franchise this year. Every time we have turned around, it's like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Down to the building that he got, that is much bigger than what he needed. But it's awesome, it's there for growth, and it's the price that he wanted to spend. He wanted the cubicles. There was another real estate company who was selling all their cubicles, and he wanted to buy them for this new building, and they wouldn't sell to him. And he was offering to give them a fair rate. And they wouldn't sell to him. And then
I get a call on a Saturday from someone that used to go to the church saying, hey, I'm over at this building and telling us to throw these cubicles away. Do you want them? I said, what building? Well, it was Mitch that actually called me. And what building? Well, this building. I'm like, they're throwing them away. I was willing to buy them. So we brought our truck over, loaded them up, and now they're in my place. And the people that refused to sell them to me was at our open house that we had, and standing right next to them. So I don't know. But anyway, that was God working, saying, here, these are your cubicles.
God's ways are not our ways.
But those are another blessing that would have cost me a heck of a lot more than free.
So one of our biggest things is when, and kind of what we'll see, what we want you to take away today is that whether it doesn't matter what you're walking through, whether it's financial or whether you're carrying a deep wound or hurt that's been done to you or you've done to yourself, because we created our mess ourselves. God would have been completely justified in saying, you know what, I help those who help themselves. Clean up your mess. I've learned to hate that saying because, God helps those who help themselves. Well, if I could help myself, I wouldn't need you. It doesn't make sense to me. That's what grace is. That's what His mercy is. That's why He sent His Son, so He can have a relationship with you. He loves you so much, it doesn't matter. He'll help you. He orchestrates these amazing things that can only be Him. And it's all for His glory. It's nothing that...
Nothing we did.
I'm just standing here. Oh, are you kidding me? Every time He would tell me, I'm like, are you kidding me? And He is no respecter of persons. What He has done for us, I think it's so important that when God does something for you, you need to, whether you're nervous or it's scary or it's hard, we need to share those things because people need to know. I can't necessarily, relate to the story of Joseph. How does that apply to you can learn from it, but when Judy told me what her and Glenn went through, because, he's a doctor. They don't have any financial problems. Are you kidding me? She couldn't possibly understand. But she understands. She understood. She walked through hard things, and she was able to encourage me and hold my arms up. So, we thought we would end today, and that song that we sang today, "It Is Well," that is such a beautiful picture of the whole wall story. Coming down off that wall, and it doesn't matter how chaotic. Kerwin, you wanna? Would you be able to come up and do a song?
Yeah.
Could you please? Thank you. Appreciate it. I was thinking that we can, because I love that song, and it's so beautiful, and it's such a beautiful picture about how we're held. And it doesn't matter, sometimes the storm is calmed, sometimes He calms you. It's so, and I was like, I wish, it happened late in the week. I'm like, I wish I could have asked Kerwin to do that song. And then I walked through the doors this morning, and they were practicing it. And I was like, the Holy Spirit is so good. The Holy Spirit is, I dropped my stuff on the floor, and Rachel's like, okay, chill out now. So we would like an opportunity this morning that if you're going through something hard, it doesn't necessarily have to be financial, just anything that's hard and you're feeling like you're tired and you want to give up, we would love just to be able to pray and encourage you and just impart whatever God has given us to you, because ultimately it's all Him, and we just want to give it away. So if some of you other would like to come up and pray as well, but we'll just be here. If you need to go, but we would love just to be able to lay hands on you and pray with you. After we're done, though, Max is headed to Washington, D.C. this afternoon. We're actually going to leave here, and I'm going to put him on a plane. And he has some meetings with some senators and mucky-muck politicians, and he's going to the Capitol building and all that kind of stuff. So I would love if some of you would stay and pray with him. He has great intentions of making some declarations and praying and imparting some kingdom goodness when he's there, because yeah, he carries that with him. So yeah, that's the plan. Thank you for listening to us this morning.